Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order this session of the Tacoma Park City Council. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Stewart.
Here.
Councilmember Tovar. Councilmember Mail.
Here.
Councilmember Qureshi.
Here.
Councilmember Siemens. Councilmember Smith.
Here.
Councilmember Schultz.
All right, so this evening, Councilmember Schultz will not be with us. He asked us to pass along to you that he was unfortunately not feeling well, was having severe chest pains, and had to go to the hospital. He's having tests run. It was not a heart attack, thankfully, and hopefully he will be home this evening. But I think a number of us have communicated with him, and he's feeling much better. So, and also before we begin tonight, I just would like to tell everyone and my colleagues that we have a new sound system, new microphones. So in order to speak, you need to press on the new microphones. When you are not speaking, when you're done, turn off the microphone because then you can the speaker will go back on. All right, and we will try this evening and see how it goes. All right, looking at our future agenda. Next week on February 1st, we will have a follow-up on the Tree Commission City Council joint meeting and a discussion of the tree canopy goal recommendation and background papers prepared by the Committee on the Environment. We will also have a discussion of the proposed vendor for housing and economic development strategic plan. So we have 3 work sessions next week. And then on Wednesday, February 8th, our next City Council meeting, we'll have two items in our voting session, a single reading ordinance authorizing the execution of a contract for the services for housing and economic development strategic plan, and the second reading of budget amendment number 2. Our work session on Wednesday, February 8th, the first will be a discussion, tentatively scheduled as a discussion of the Nuclear-Free Tacoma Park Committee recommendation on the city's banking. We will have a report out from the City Council retreat and discussion of council priorities. I asked my colleagues to please review the document that the Deputy City Manager sent around so that we can post those before the meeting. I think the Deputy City Manager requested comments back by Friday. Correct. That work session, we will also have that evening a discussion of a personal property tax bill for a particular city business. That then takes us to Friday, February 10th. We will have our first Friday morning community coffee at 8 a.m. at the Tacoma Park Rec Center on New Hampshire Avenue with Councilmember Fred Schultz. And then on Wednesday, February 15th, we'll have 2 work sessions. One is tentatively scheduled the police department's annual report, and then a work session regarding a discussion of city council subcommittees, how they're structured, and if we want to look at structuring them differently. And then on Wednesday, February 22nd, we have a discussion of a proposal to create a scatter garden in the city and an overview of the city's boards, commissions, and committees. All right, so that takes us into mid-February. In addition, the city clerk did send us all the schedule for our budget meetings. If people could pay attention to those, they will begin the end of March. Yes, the end of March, and run through April. And when we do our budgets meetings, remember there are a number of weeks where we meet twice a week. So please pay attention to that schedule. All right, I think that's it for agenda items. Next, we'll have public comments on voting items. We have 2 voting items this evening. The first is a single reading ordinance authorizing execution of contract for services for I Can Shine. Any comments on that? No? Okay. Our second voting item is the first reading ordinance authorizing the FY 2017 budget amendment number 2. Any public comments on that? All right. Seeing no public comments on our voting items, then we will move then to general public comments. Any public comments? Great. We're getting the microphone to you. Go ahead, Mr. Lovelace.
Okay, this is Pat Lovelace, the official peace delegate. Is this working?
Yes, try it again, Mr. Lovelace.
Okay, this is the official peace delegate. 7620 Maple Avenue, Tacoma Park. Pat Lovelace. I just wanted to tell everybody out there that we had a great events this weekend. We had the inaugural events, which I'm sad to say they had some violence in it, and we had the women's march, and that, talk about a big demonstration, that was huge, and there was no violence. We had over 1 million people, they say, and it was great. Talk about being 1 in a million, I was, and I'm very proud of it. And I also want to ask the people out there, when are we going to get the program going for the Tacoma Park Folk Festival again this year? We've got to start working on that. We can't wait until September 1st and then say we couldn't do it. I'd like to see the Tacoma Park Folk Festival worked on as soon as possible. If we can put advertisements in the paper, in the newsletter, and in the Gazette, I'd like to see something done to take a vigorous role in getting the Tacoma Park Folk Festival together. That's a great place for networking, to get organizations together working on the peace issues. It's a great way to meet new people. And Tacoma Park is Tacoma Park at the Folk Festival. That has Tacoma Park written all over it. Everybody loves it. And I think we should all stick to it. Somebody had a great idea when they came up with that. We cannot let the Folk Festival die again this year. We have to keep it on. And I'm very proud to say that I've been to most of the folk festivals. And I've been to a lot of different actions, and that folk festival was one of the biggest ones in Tacoma Park. We cannot let it die, so please don't let it die. Also, I just want to ask people, when they go to these demonstrations, there's going to be a lot more demonstrations since we got you-know-who in office. It's a dirty word, Trump. Since we got him in office, I want to see what we can do to start networking together. If he did anything, he brought people together. We would not have had all those millions of people down in D.C. for the Women's March if they didn't have him in office. But we got him, and we got to work with what we've got. So please, come to our demonstrations, but leave your violence behind. We don't need violence, because that makes the other side look good. It makes us look bad. Okay, well, thank you very much for letting me share in peace and love it. Love it, love it, love it.
Any other public comments this evening?
Hazards. When you're going on Maple Avenue, making a right turn into 410, right on the corner of this building, it's really unsafe because it says walk totally the whole time when the light is green. And if you're not paying attention, you're going to run over a pedestrian. And also, there's the thing on 410. I'm really getting angry at 410 for some reason. Tim had pointed out before, just past the co-op, when you're going towards Hyattsville, that used to be this really big bump in the road that you could hurt your tire on or whatever. Now it's kind of the opposite. It's going down, and a person can ruin their tires if they're not going 5 miles an hour on. It's not pretty much where the 25-mile-an-hour speed limit is. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Any other public comments this evening?
Yes, Jeffrey Nussbaum at 228 Manor Circle. I just wanted to comment on, I took a chance to look over the information that was submitted about Ocean City's process, and I wanted to make some comments about that and how that compares to our process. And so the first thing is, looking at it, even in even number of years, their election is staffed at a level that was lower than our current one, and we're going to have to be staffed at an even higher level. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that they can have a single site due to Ocean City's geography. It's an island, so if people are going somewhere else, they're going in only one direction, and so people are living there, and it can make sure it's the center. Here, Tacoma Park has all these weird angles and sorts, so there's no real set central place. They also have the staggered terms and all at-large council, and that reduces cost and complexity while increasing competition and maintaining continuity on the council. We don't have those advantages here when it comes to moving to an even number of years. So another one is saying that they don't even have write-ins in their charter. I mean, that reduces complexity, but it's something Tacoma Park would not support. The same thing with there are also similar issues with their VAC process and their equipment support due to being in an even number. Well, the equipment support due to being in an even number year, and most of the vendors are supporting other elections, and their VAC process is poor procedure, and I would not support taking those shortcuts. Another issue is that was mentioned was who's in the end of the line at the end of the day. It's like if you're in the end of one line, can you vote in the other? At 8 o'clock. If you don't allow that, then you're going to have people who are unhappy. But if you do allow it, you're going to have the results coming in even later. And even if you do allow people to do it, you'll have results coming in later, and you still might have people unhappy. Another thing I'd say is to take time on this process. We have plenty of time at this point. There's no need to rush. I was noticing that we could do our you could do the first reading on a charter amendment on the same day as the public hearing, but I would definitely not do that. I would wait. And the other thing is I would put the question, once you have charter amendment languages, back on the ballot this year, because when people voted last time, they were voting on an abstract issue. And now, once we have specific issues, I think rather than forcing people to try and petition it, I would go ahead and put it back on, and it would lead to more interest in the election this time. And if you're looking at interest in the election, I'd put it back on the ballot and get that.
Thank you. And sorry, it doesn't seem like the 30-second beep is working tonight. Any other public comments? No? All right. Then we'll move on to council comments. No, wait, now try again, now. Why isn't it working? No, wait. That's weird. Oh, wait. Oh, they are, sorry.
So that tells you that we want to speak also.
The new buttons, all right.
So the new buttons turn the
Mic
mic
on.
on.
And, right, so the old things, ignore those, sorry.
Okay.
New microphones, all right. Councilmember Mayo.
Thank you. I just wanted to share a.
No, you have to keep your mic on,
Oh,
yeah.
I didn't,
Take it.
let's see, but I touched this.
Okay.
Okay, interesting.
That's right.
I wanted to share a design for a library that a resident shared with me that they found very exciting and a wonderful space to be in. It's for Portsmouth, New Hampshire, which is a much bigger city than we are, a much bigger library. But the point, I'd asked for the clerk to provide copies of these reference materials to my colleagues. The point that you'll see in the drawings is that there are lots of sort of small, bright spaces for people to sit and gather. There's lots of windows, and that's something we talked about with some of the library designs, and that would cost more money. But it, clearly it's something that could make a huge difference in how the space is used and how the space feels. So I'm just going to pass these along to the city clerk, and if you could share them with my colleagues, that'd be great.
Right there? All right. Councilmember Smith?
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say that I had the opportunity to go to the Women's March on Saturday. It was an incredible event. I could not believe the number of people that were there. I just hope that this is the beginning and not the end of people expressing their opinions regarding the new administration. But we're going to have to continue to be organized and not just march or demonstrate on Saturdays, but disrupt activities in the District of Columbia and around the country during the work week. Thank you.
Okay. Darn, I just did. You had to redo your button, sorry. Councilmember Siemens is next.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to assure Mr. Lovelace that the Folk Festival is being organized again this year. There's a group of people who've gotten together and working on it. And so rest assured there will be another Folk Festival. Thank you.
Love it, love it, love it. Thank you.
Councilmember Kovar?
Thank you. Two things. I did want to echo what Councilmember Smith said. I also had an opportunity to be at the march on Saturday, and it was an incredible crowd. I started off with a group that was in Silver Spring, where now Congressman Raskin had organized some buses. I got to help do that. I believe the mayor was there and some of the other folks up here as well. And I think I was on the last bus because I was helping organize, get people on there, so I never found most of the rest of the people. But it was a great opportunity to see the just incredible numbers of people. And I do agree, though, with Councilmember Smith that that's not the end of the process. And in fact, the announcement today, and I know calls came into the city about this from the media, about the fact that the new administration has put out an announcement on the sanctuary city question, shows that we're really going to have to engage very actively on the various things that they're going to be putting forward. So this is just the start of that. And then shifting gears completely, I was very pleased that I was alerted in advance to some street repair work on Tulip Avenue, and I think it was a very positive thing that I heard from Mr. Chamberlain, DPW, and this is exactly what should happen every other time. So kudos for that. Thanks.
Great. I just have a couple of announcements. One regarding our sanctuary city status, as Councilmember Kovar just mentioned. There was an executive order signed today by President Trump. Our city staff has put updated information on our city website. If people would care to look at that, we still are a sanctuary city. And in addition to that, we are having a Tacoma Park Sanctuary City Then and Now event on Saturday, February 4th at 3 p.m. here in the community center. There will be panel discussions. Our county council member, Mark Elridge, will be here, as will be the executive director of Casa de Maryland, and our council member, Terry Siemens, will be here, and a number of other people talking about the history and what is happening now to our status as a sanctuary city. In addition, on then February 5th, if you'd like to spend your entire weekend here at the community center, we have rescheduled our conversation on Cuba. It will take place at 4 p.m. here in the community center, and we will have the first secretary for the Cuban embassy joining us. And actually, Mark Elridge will be back again that day. So we get him both days. And I think that is it for updates. The city manager?
Yes, thank you. I passed out my written comments, and it does include information on the related to the President Trump's executive order on sanctuary cities. We're still trying to assess what that might mean for Tacoma Park. There's very different levels of sanctuary cityness, and there's a lot of the order is somewhat indistinct about how it would apply, and I think it's going to take some time to see what that means. I was pleased that we were able to get out some of the information and background of that applies to Tacoma Park on our website. And we were contacted, I think, by, the BBC and several local radio and television stations, and the Post, I think. I have included information on the Eastern Avenue WSSC project that was shared by WSSC, I think, a week ago. And it's nice that they at least identified kind of their process and their timeline. We'll see how it goes. And wanted to follow up on information that was shared by Councilmember Kovar at last meeting related to concern by some Ward 1 residents about the safety of pedestrians and bicyclists on Philadelphia Avenue. And in particular, we really appreciated getting the information that they prepared. Love to have more interaction with them and our city staff. But did want to share some information on the SHA bike and pedestrian priority areas. The Tacoma Park is included within the Montgomery County's bike and pedestrian priority area. They are studying an area of Philadelphia right outside of the city limits. They also will be dealing with Long Branch area and Tacoma Langley Crossroads. And the first public meeting on the Tacoma Langley Crossroads project is on February 21st from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. at New Hampshire Estates Elementary School. So it's wonderful that those things are moving forward. We're not sure how that goes, but we certainly said, yes, we want to be involved.
Is it possible to add additional areas over time to that?
I think it is, but there's a process. I mean, I think
Right.
the county's just got so many, and
Right.
so we're
Okay.
somewhat in the queue. At least we're not far down in the queue.
Thanks.
Want to share that we're preparing to solicit proposals for public art projects again. So if you have locations in your wards that you think might be good sites for future public art, please share that information with staff. You can, and others can suggest at arts@tacomaparkmaryland.gov. Wanted to share that we have some new police department staff. The mayor swore in 2 new officers a couple days ago. But they graduate from the Montgomery County Public Safety Training Academy tomorrow. They've completed their 28-week training program. They will be attending a week-long training on civil disturbances before reporting to field training. The field training program is a 14-week program where they will learn to apply the skills in real-world situations before they're allowed to patrol on their own. And we also, besides the 2 new officers, we have 4 new cadets. 3 of them have begun at the academy this week. They're scheduled to graduate in July. The 4th will be working on various assignments in the police department until the next academy session begins this summer. And just wanted to note that in light of the recent council retreat discussions about advancing racial equity, we're pleased to report that 4 of the 6 are people of color. They're all male. We certainly have women officers. We continue to urge highly capable women and men of all ethnicities to consider a career with the Tacoma Park Police Department. And the folks are really excited about being here and contributing to Tacoma Park. So I hope you have an opportunity to meet with them. And I also want to just note that staff has been working on budget preparation. Your part of it really begins in April. Ours has already begun. We've been working on the capital improvement program, major technology, infrastructure planning, and I'm very pleased that we've got staff that have helped arrange the work on this so that we have a very systematic approach to looking at our capital projects, at our vehicle replacement policy, and our technology purchases so that they make sense in the long term, they clearly advance the city's interests, and they minimize risk and they minimize cost for the city. I want to particularly give kudos to Susan Chung, Elisa Trammell, and Daryl Braithwaite for their work on the capital improvement program. To Daryl Braithwaite, Jason Damweber, Alan Goldberg, and Richard Bowers for their work on the refinement of the vehicle replacement policy, which you'll see soon. And also to Jason Damweber and the Technology Steering Committee for the work on the technology investment process. It really is a tremendous amount of work that they've done, and it's really helpful. So I'm very pleased. And I just want to let them know publicly that I really appreciate it. That's all.
Thank you. And I actually forgot to mention that on Sunday evening, the city manager and myself met with a number of residents. Seems like a long time ago, Sunday evening, who had sent around some announcements around the listservs, forming a group that would work with local businesses and residents to improve relations. So we had some good conversation on Sunday evening, and we'll be getting back to them with information. And I also forgot that on Monday night, Councilmember Smith and I joined professors at Washington Adventist University and members of the Unity and Community Initiative to watch the documentary about Shirley Chisholm's race for the presidency, and then had a discussion. It was very well attended, and we had a terrific conversation. So, forgot to mention those. And then tomorrow evening, we are meeting, a number of us with, and some city staff, with Vanita Myers and staff at Cheer to continue conversations about the housing policy. Councilmember Mail, do you have something?
Yeah, I wanted to ask the city manager for an update on the hiring process for the lobbyist in Rockville.
I'm hoping that it moves very quickly. It's the top of my pile on my desk.
Thanks.
Thank you. I have a question regarding sanctuaries. Are churches considered sanctuaries automatically, or do they have to go through some process to get?
The definition of sanctuary is very different for different kinds of uses or things. There is a long religious tradition of sanctuary, but that kind of is what that particular religion, it says they define it.
Okay.
I don't think it applies in any of the discussions that were done today by the president.
All right. Thank you.
All right, now moving on, since the legislative session has begun in Annapolis, we've pulled out the legislative update in our agenda to make sure that we talk about it each week. And so I'm going to turn it over to Councilmember Smith and our city clerk to update us on legislative matters.
The latest thing from the Maryland Municipal League's legislative committee, we met last week. We meet on Thursdays now rather than Wednesdays. There will be 2 bills that will drop this year on highway user revenue. One bill will provide for 2 annual infusions of funds beginning in fiscal year 2019 to bring the municipal highway user revenue funding to a minimum level of $50 million in fiscal year 2020. The second bill will adjust the base formula such that the municipal HUR level in fiscal year 2019 would not be less than $40 million and not less than $50 million in fiscal year 2020. MACO is also going to drop a bill that is going to include Baltimore City and municipalities. Last year, a highway user revenue bill came out of the Senate, but it never got an opportunity to get to the floor of the House. So we are very hopeful that the Speaker Bush will at least give us a vote this year. Another one of the priorities for the Legislative Committee, stormwater fee. This bill will be brought forward by Delegate Barve of Montgomery County. He's the chair of Environment and Transportation. The hope with this bill is to make sure that a municipal stormwater fee paid by all levels of government. Currently, there are several municipalities that impose their own stormwater management fee. However, in some cities, their stormwater fees are not being paid by the county, the state, or the federal government. So we're trying to make sure that all levels of government have to pay the stormwater fee, and it's not just on the backs of municipalities. The third priority, the trying to get a better relationship between SHA and the utilities. A subcommittee was formed by the chair of the Legislative Committee, Mayor Bridget Newton of Rockville. She made me chair of this subcommittee. We will have our meeting tomorrow at MML's office in Annapolis. All municipalities, or not municipalities, but utilities and SHA have confirmed that they will be in attendance except Verizon and Delmarva Power. Delmarva has a good excuse. They have a board meeting, so they can't send anyone. but we are hopeful that Verizon will change their current position and send someone. So this is going to give us an opportunity with a number of representatives of municipalities throughout the state of Maryland to come up with some type of framework and hopefully an MOU that the utilities and SHA will sign so that it will change how we do business with one another. Mayor, that is it.
The city clerk have anything?
Sure, there's just a few things I'd like to highlight. Some information that was sent out by Public Policy Partners, our legislative advocates last week. One of the bills that I believe the council would certainly want to support and possibly even testify on is this, the Yard Waste and Food Residuals Diversion and Infrastructure Study bill. It would study the issue and possibly move along the opportunity to have more composting facilities in the state, or any composting facilities in the state. So there's that one. We'll keep you informed about that. That was in the General Assembly last year as well, but it didn't come out. This, in particular, it would have a representative from MML on the committee, representative of MACO, and someone from the Center for our own local Center for Local Self-Reliance on this task force. I think the deputy city manager perhaps has something to say on a polystyrene
Yes.
bill.
Senator Kagan has introduced a statewide bill that would prohibit the sale of polystyrene food service products. While it's similar to the county bill, it has some differences that are of concern to the county and to Gaithersburg and possibly other municipalities who have bans in place, including Tacoma Park. Some things to consider. The proposed bill would likely preempt local authority, although per Ken, the city attorney, that's not entirely clear yet. Either way, he believes that it would be good to have an express no preemption clause in the bill. The proposed bill would put enforcement responsibility in the hands of the county, and as proposed, the fine schedule would differ from those currently in place. The proposed bill would allow the state to provide an exemption to a business who could not afford to implement the changes, where the county allows for a very narrow exemption for a specific item, not for an entire business. The county council is supportive of the concept, but would like to carve out would like a carve out for local jurisdictions that have already passed their own bans on polystyrene, so that the state bill does not preempt local law. To that end, the person working with the county on the issue reached out to us to see if we would support the amendment. Staff and the city attorney recommend that we do support that carve-out, which would be present whether or not the city of Tacoma Park participates if the county is successful in getting that added. I've corresponded with Councilmember Smith about it, and he agrees with that. So unless there's objection to us jumping on board with the county and with Gaithersburg, we'll go ahead and throw our hat in the ring to support that.
Does anyone have any questions regarding that legislation?
I have one more thing I'd like to mention.
Sure.
Should I?
You're good.
Oh,
You're on.
There is legislation submitted by Delegate Lutke to reduce the minimum age for election judges in the state to 16, and it seems worth support by the city if that's something. It seems to fit right in with the sort of thing we're doing, and would also make more election judges available, which are always needed. Yes. It also, as it's written, would require that election judges receive at least minimum wage for their time, which also makes sense.
Councilmember Mail?
On the polystyrene bill, do we have a position on county enforcement or not?
We have not. I just learned of this earlier this week, so we have not gotten that far into conversations about it.
Because I guess I don't have a standing view of whether having the county do the enforcement is a bad thing, but otherwise.
Yeah, it would be wonderful to not have to provide that enforcement, but when we can provide enforcement, we can control the level
Yeah.
that we're enforcing. So there
Yeah,
are pros and cons for sure.
Okay, thanks.
Great. I had a question on timing on when because there were a couple of other bills that I noticed in the update. One was on the program Open Space, and I believe last year when this came up, we did Councilmember Kovar, did you testify on the program Open Space? It might have been Councilmember Schultz.
I was supposed to testify, but
Okay. Yeah, right. But that was one, and there was a workforce housing
Yes.
bill I also just wanted to bring to our attention. And I think there was another elections one in addition to the,
There is a second one. It's it deals with election observers. Well, there's two other ones, but perhaps the one you're talking about is one that would require polling places on college campuses
Yeah, that was the
have
one.
residential students, college campuses that issue baccalaureate and graduate degrees. So there is that bill introduced by Senator Bobby Zirkin. And I looked at the fiscal note on it, and a lot of the campuses already have polling places,
Okay.
but not all of them. And interestingly, I guess, as I read it, this would require one at Columbia Union College.
Washington.
Washington Adventist University. So I don't know what would happen with this. And the other one the other bill introduced by Senator Kagan would require, it deals with election observers and how they're treated at the polling place. And one of the newer things would require that they be issued if they have the proper credentials, a list of registered voters, which would be a new thing, because right now you have to be a registered voter in the state to request that information, or you have to be an academic institution to request the list of registered voters. And this would enable an election observer to also receive a list if they requested it, if they're properly credentialed by the state.
may I ask?
Yeah.
The bill regarding putting polling places at possibly Washington Adventist University, is it possible we could talk to them and see what their feeling is before we take a position? Okay. Thank you.
So I guess my question was, do we know, and from our lobbyists in Annapolis, when we need to come back to them, whether or not we want to take a position on these?
Right, I will check on that, check
Okay.
on these. With the program Open Space ones, I'm making the assumption, taking a leap, that MML is going to be analyzing these
Yes.
and will alert us.
Yes. We're going to meet on that one tomorrow.
Okay.
Oh, that was on the list? Okay, sorry, I missed that one on that. Okay. Councilmember Mayo?
Yeah, and I guess the two questions I have on the open space bill, if local government entities that have met their open space goals can now use their money for, I think it's referred to as ongoing development, what does that mean? I'm assuming that we have or have not met our program open space goals. I would assume we're not, but I don't know. Let's say we're not. Does it mean that places that have met it would get to use money, and that money would no longer be distributed to places like Tacoma Park that haven't met their goals?
I
'Cause
think
that's the-
I think that's what we have to find out.
Okay, so that's, like, if the fiscal consequence is potentially less money being redistributed, then I would oppose the bill. And then on the election book, the voter lists, that's different than the actual, like, election book, right?
Yes.
They would get a list of voters, but it's not the same as getting a,
I have to look into it. It would not be a poll book, if
Right.
that's what you mean.
That's what I mean, yeah.
I'm thinking it would be the electronic list.
okay. And
But I need
they,
to confirm that.
and at whose cost?
That's to be determined by the state, by regulation, by the state board.
Okay, thank you.
So unfunded mandate.
So if the city clerk could communicate with our lobbyists and get back to us, and
Yes.
then I would ask my colleagues if they can look at the information that has been circulated, and if there are other bills other than the ones we raised tonight that you have interest in and have questions on, to get that to the city clerk by the end of the week, so that maybe next week we can put on the agenda, go do a deeper dive and see if we want to take a position on any of these moving forward. All right? All right, let's move now to our voting session. The first is a single reading ordinance authorizing execution of a contract for services with I Can Shine.
This is a very straightforward contract discussion. Approval. For 3 years, we've had, this would be the third year we've had I Can Shine help teach mostly children with severe disabilities how to ride bicycles, and it's a wonderful program. It's a very specialized skill to teach with these very specialized adapted bikes. The cost of the program is $11,000, so it exceeds our $10,000 amount. We have done some research and found that this is eligible as a sole source. We don't have other entities that provide this kind of training, and we'd like your support for authorizing the execution of the contract. There is funds for that in our budget.
Great.
I'd like to move it.
All right, Councilmember Siemens moved. Do I have a second? Councilmember Qureshi, second. Any comments, questions? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Mayor Stewart, may I call the roll for this?
Oh, yes, okay. Sorry about that. Just moved too fast. Go ahead.
Councilmember Kovar,
Aye.
Councilmember Mayo,
Aye.
Councilmember Qureshi, Councilmember Siemens, Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Schultz, Mayor Stewart.
Yes. All right. Next is the first reading ordinance authorizing FY 2017 Budget Amendment 2.
Periodically, we have budget amendments, and we have a couple items that it's time to do a budget amendment about. They're fairly straightforward. I think there will be a couple other items. There might be something that comes to you at second reading, and I'll go through that in a moment. But let me go through the two items that are on this budget amendment that is proposed. One is a change in the allocation of community development block grant funds due to the discontinuation of a program that was previously eligible for those funds. The $5,240 originally allocated for the CDBG cheer program was reallocated to two other programs that had already been authorized to receive funds: the CDBG Educare Support Program and the CDBG Village of Tacoma program. The Educare program was increased by $2,200 to $5,750. The Village of Tacoma program, which is the on behalf of parents of special needs adults to have the Spirit Club, was increased by $3,010 to $7,900. We were requested at the very last minute to what we were going to do with these funds that wouldn't be going through, and so we suggested this breakdown, and this would approve that the reallocation. A second change in this budget amendment is the need for additional funds for intern services in the Human Resources Office due to staff absence, having babies, human resources. The original appropriation of $10,000 is being requested to be increased by $13,000 to $23,000. This has made a tremendous improvement in the services of the HR department, and I ask for your approval on this. The two other items that may come to you either as a second reading or at a future budget amendment. One is a carryover project for our server room. The other that was supposed to have been done in FY16 and it wasn't carried over. It looks like it may be able to proceed this year. We're finding out the details on that. The other is a nice thing, and that is that our down payment program has received a lot of interest. And so we may very well need more than the $50,000 that was allocated for that. We're double-checking some of the applications to see if it works, but we're really thrilled that even with minimal advertising, we've received quite a lot of strong interest and just thrilled about that. So hoping that I can bring that back to you at second reading. Otherwise, it may be something that comes at a future budget amendment. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have about this.
Any questions before we move it? All right. Did you have a question, Council? All right. Would someone like to move this? Councilmember Smith, a second.
Second.
Councilmember Mail, second. Any discussion or questions? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No? All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, next we'll move on to our work session, which is an update on Board of Elections and the election synchronization. I turn to the city clerk.
Right, so a number of members of our Board of Elections are here, and I think Marilyn Abbott has some remarks for the council. She's the chair of the board. So she will be telling you about a meeting that we had with, a meeting we attended with the Montgomery County Board of Elections where we heard a very positive response from the board, and essentially we were invited to work on an MOU with the State Board of Elections and the County Board of Elections to share the polling places in 2018 if we want to do that.
As Jesse just mentioned, on Monday, the Montgomery County Board of Elections voted to authorize a negotiation of a memorandum of understanding between the state, the county, and the city to let the Tacoma Park municipal elections take place at the precincts where Tacoma Park residents will vote in 2018 in November. I was actually not at that meeting. Councilmember Kovar, the city clerk, and member of the board, Arthur David Olson, were at the meeting. The broad outline that the memorandum of understanding will need to take is to define that will be that the City of Tacoma Park election sites would be located within the same building as the county election sites in the Tacoma Park precincts, but not in the same room. Voter check-in. Voters will check in to vote in one location at one election. They will vote. They will exit the room. They will then check in and vote in the second election. A greeter will be stationed inside the entrance to each precinct. Greeters are already part of the county election process. They're just not necessarily at all precincts, so they will be at all the Tacoma Park precincts, and the county and city will share the cost of the greeter. The other understanding is that everything other than the greeter will be separate. Check-in will be separate. Ballot distribution, voting will be separate. Tacoma Park will be responsible for its own election equipment, promotion, ballots, and other materials that relate to the processing. And the county and city will separately recruit, hire, and train election workers for the polling places. That would be your broad memorandum of understanding. Other details that need to be worked out or need to be considered that the city can work with the staff of the county would be determining the best check-in options for the Tacoma Park election. Well, without going into a lot of detail, the issue would be whether to continue to use the electronic poll books from the county state, whether to procure or develop a Tacoma Park alternative check-in technology, or to use paper precinct registers. This all really relates more to changes that will be coming in for the 2018 election that have to do with updating the timing on updating the poll book and being able to integrate that people voted into an election afterwards into the database the state maintains. It's some technical issues in there. Another issue that needs to be worked on is whether it would be possible to include notice on the county sample ballots that are mailed out that the Tacoma Park municipal election will be occurring at the same time. This is, I think, just a matter of space on the sample ballot mailing. A different question would just be how the county election cost center will handle likely municipal calls and refer them to the city if necessary. And additionally, the city would need to determine its own equipment needs to supplement what is additional to what the county has offered. The county has offered us 2 voting tables and an accessible voting table. The city just needs to work on what else we need at those locations. And the city does need to explore accessible voting technology to have it available at the location, at all locations. Some concrete things that need to happen is the city charter, as you're aware, needs to be amended. We would need to establish one-term candidates for the one-year terms for the candidates who would be running in the 2017 election. And then we would need to change the charter to show that a 2018 election and then elections even-numbered years thereafter, and reschedule the candidate nominating caucus. The city code, municipal code, we would need to review just to see if there are necessary changes because of the change in the election date. And then just other things that are going on with elections. We need to plan and execute the 2017 election. We need to propose a early voting process for 2018 if we go forward. The county would require us to have early voting at all of the county locations. Logistically and financially, that's difficult. So the city will, the board's thinking is the city would conduct its own early voting. We would just need to propose a process to you all that would be acceptable. And then we need to plan and execute the 2018 election. Additionally, one other thing that is going on, and the city clerk's been working on this, is working with the county on locating an alternative or additional site for splitting the 1368 precinct out again. So that's where we are. So.
Great, thank you.
Sorry. I'll just quickly add 2 other things, and in your agenda packet is just one sample of a charter amendment schedule, and also included in the packet is Arthur David Olson's observations of the Ocean City election. It's not to suggest that we would do the same things they do, but it is interesting to see that the process does work for them there. So we provided that for you.
Great, thank you, and thank you, Mr. Olson. It was a very good report and helpful. Thank you. All right, any questions or discussion? Councilmember Siemens?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for all the information tonight. It's exciting to see how far this has moved in the time that you've all been working on it. And I get the impression that what looked like it was unsurmountable problems have been surmounted, and things are moving pretty well at this point.
I had my doubts it was going to happen, to be honest. So,
Okay, are you feeling more comfortable with it, I guess is my real question.
yes.
Okay, very good. I thank you so much for the work, you and the rest of the committee.
Well, it's been a team effort, so we all thank you.
Councilmember Kovar?
Thank you. I was able to be there and participate in some of the discussions, and just for the benefit of my colleagues, I thought the response was very positive from the members of the board. There were plenty of questions, but they were more, I would say, at least a lot of the focus more on technically how it would work, and a big concern was they really wanted to make sure they're separate. And they really wanted to make sure, with the exception of the sharing of the cost of the greeter out front, that they weren't going to get some unexpected hidden surprise costs later. And so I think we did okay in showing them that we wouldn't. And while I didn't pledge anybody to anything, I said to the extent that there were extra costs, for example, on a sample ballot, that was something we would take up. We wouldn't expect them to pay for that. Obviously, there's no requirement based on my having said that for us to do that, but I just think if they could be assured, and I think they were by the end of it, that they weren't going to get any hidden costs, it made them feel better. They did emphasize that working on this memorandum of understanding, the state would also have to be involved in signing off on it too, so it wasn't exclusively them. But they approved the motion to work with us on the MOU on unanimous voice vote. So no one was feeling like it was a terrible idea from what I could see. The question which the gentleman mentioned in public comments about the after 8 p.m. Votes that, to my mind, would clearly have to be in the MOU, because you could imagine if somebody showed up at 7:59 or whatever and they were waiting in line and they got in and checked in at one place, we couldn't have a situation where just depending on which of the two lines they decided to go to first, they wouldn't get to vote in the other one. So I think we'd have to have an agreement that once they were in line, they could then go to the other. So if you're in the line outside or in the building, you should, you should be allowed to vote in both of them. I think that would be an essential thing for us to do. On early voting, just to be honest about this, was the one place where I still saw some work that we would have to do, because despite whatever we do to publicize this, there are bound to be some people who are just going to say, oh, early voting, I'm just going to go vote in Silver Spring, and they're going to go vote, and they'll get there, and they might not even notice. Hard to imagine, they might not even notice that they didn't see any of our names up there, and they would vote, and they'd be done, and then later on they'd be talking to somebody and say, well, you still have to go vote at Tacoma Park, and maybe they won't have the chance to do that. So there's going to be this need for some publicity on that, since we can do our own early voting, but a lot of people are just going to know, oh, there's always a big line in Silver Spring, I can go there on one of these 6 or 7 or 10 days, however many they have, and then they'll miss it. So that strikes me as a key thing we're going to have to do publicity on if we go. And then the one other thing I would say is the hiring of the poll workers. I think one of the things that Mr. Olson had suggested, just when we were talking about it afterwards, was if we go down this path in the upcoming election, we try to get more people and do some double shifts so that we get a group of trained people who already are starting to get ready for this. So I'll stop there, but I think the reception overall was very positive.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Anything else?
I guess I just would like to note that as we were talking about the agendas going forward, we were looking for kind of an extra date to have a public hearing on this that's different than necessarily the charter public hearing. And tentatively, we have that on the agenda for March 1st, with the idea that rather than have something in the newsletter, which the timing doesn't quite work as well, we would actually do a mailing to all residents. And I think that that seemed a wise move for this, and as a way to, first of all, let people know about the details that are being discussed here, something that's more final than had previously discussed. And it also will alert them to the actual charter public hearing. Certainly, I think you would consider the comments at both as you consider the charter amendment, but in looking at the schedule, it looked like the best way to make sure that we got public comment on this proposal.
Anything else? Does the Elections Committee and the City Clerk have enough direction from the City Council? Do you need anything else from us? All right.
Still full steam ahead at this point.
I think so, yep.
We're going that way.
Great. Thank you. Thank you again for your work and for coming this evening. That is it for our agenda items tonight. It's a short meeting. We had to move a couple of things off tonight. I asked my colleagues to look at a couple of things that are waiting for you in your inboxes. The priorities document from the Deputy City Manager, legislative items that we discussed tonight, because I do know I did talk to our lobbyist, Alice Wilkerson, and while I did not get a date from her when she needs feedback on what we'd like to do, it's coming soon. Things move really quickly in Annapolis during the session. And then we did circulate a draft letter that our city attorney wrote for us to send to the Maryland Municipal League regarding the pesticide lawsuit. So if folks could review those three things, and there's probably more, but definitely those three things by the end of the week, that would be terrific. All right, I think we are now adjourned.